Look, before you hear this story from someone else, and you will, because people love to talk, let me give you the unedited version. Let me tell you exactly what went down. Because in the court of public opinion, a woman who chooses to feel confident in her own skin is somehow always the villain. It's a narrative I'm sick of starring in. My name is Sloane. I'm 26, and up until a few months ago, I was seeing a guy named Julian. For about 3 months, to be exact. He's 29, works in some glass and steel corporate tower downtown, doing whatever it is that ambitious, suit-wearing people do all day. And for a while there, I genuinely believed we were building something real. We met the way everyone meets now. A calculated swipe right, a witty opening line, and a first date that felt surprisingly, refreshingly normal. The first couple of months were, for lack of a better word, amazing. Julian seemed like he had his life together in a way that men my age simply didn't. He had his own apartment with furniture that matched, a 401k, and a steady paycheck that didn't rely on a gig economy app. He wasn't living with 3 perpetually stoned roommates who left pizza boxes molding in the living room. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd found an actual adult, someone who wasn't going to waste my time with mind games or pointless, late-night drama. God, how wrong I was. The drama was there. It was just dressed up in a tailored suit and called professionalism. But the signs were there from the beginning, hiding in plain sight. I just didn't want to see them. Julian had this subtle, almost imperceptible way of trying to sand down my edges. He was always dropping these little hints about how I should present myself when we were out together. He never came right out and told me what to wear that would have been too obviously controlling. Instead, he specialized in passive-aggressive suggestions, veiled as helpful advice, about looking appropriate or put together. I remember our 2-month anniversary. We went to this incredibly chic, upscale restaurant downtown where the cocktails cost more than my lunch for a week. I was wearing a silk camisole that I loved, one that made me feel elegant and a little sexy. As we were leaving my apartment, he looked me up and down, a tiny frown line appearing between his perfectly groomed eyebrows. "You might want to bring a sweater, Sloane," he said, his tone casual. "Just in case the air conditioning is too aggressive." It was 85 degrees outside, in the middle of July. It wasn't about the temperature. It was about my shoulders. It was a gentle, polite way of saying, "Cover up." I brushed it off, grabbing a cardigan I had no intention of wearing, because I was still in that phase where you make excuses for the person you want to believe in. Then the work situation came up. It was some big client appreciation party at his boss's house in the suburbs, the kind of place with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. Suddenly, Julian started acting like this single event was the linchpin of his entire professional future. "This is really important for my career trajectory, Sloane," he said one night, his voice laced with a seriousness I hadn't heard before. "Everything needs to go smoothly." Okay, fine. I'm not an idiot. I understand that work events are about networking and making a good impression. But the way he said it, the emphasis he put on smoothly, made me feel less like his girlfriend he was excited to introduce and more like a volatile variable he needed to manage. A potential liability. And let's not forget, this was the first time in 3 months of dating that he had ever invited me to anything remotely related to his job. For weeks, that part of his life had been a closed door. Suddenly, I was deemed worthy of meeting his professional circle, and I couldn't help but wonder if he'd been deliberately keeping me separate because he thought I wasn't polished enough, not corporate enough for his world. But I pushed those insecurities down. I told myself I was overthinking it. I was genuinely excited. I saw it as a major step forward for us, a sign that he was finally ready to integrate me into his life in a serious way. This wasn't just a party, it was a debut, and I was determined to look the part. Seeing this event as the milestone it was, I decided I needed something new, something special, something that said, "Hello, I'm with Julian, and yes, he is incredibly lucky." So I went on a mission. I made a special shopping trip to a boutique I usually only window shopped at, the kind of place where the sales associates offer you sparkling water. I was on a budget, but my excitement overrode my financial common sense. After trying on what felt like 100 different options, too boring, too bright, too mother of the bride, I found it. It was a black dress, but it was the black dress. The fabric was a heavy crepe that skimmed my body perfectly, hugging my curves without clinging. It was a little shorter than what I might usually wear, ending a few inches above the knee, but it was undeniably sophisticated. The neckline was the best part, an elegant, asymmetrical cut that showed off my collarbone. It was interesting without being scandalous, confident without being desperate for attention. When I looked at myself in the dressing room mirror, I felt a surge of power. I looked incredible. I looked like $1,000,000, even though it cost me $200 I honestly couldn't afford, money that was earmarked for groceries and bills. But in that moment, it felt like an investment in our future. "Oh, honey," the sales associate breathed when I stepped out to show her. "That is your dress. Any man would be a fool not to feel like the luckiest guy in the room with you on his arm." Her words were like a prophecy. I bought it without a second thought, floating out of the store with the sleek black garment bag in my hand. The evening of the party, I took my time getting ready. I played my favorite music, did my makeup with extra care, and styled my hair exactly how I wanted it. When I finally slipped on the dress, it felt even better than it had in the store. It was my armor. I was Sloane, confident and beautiful, ready to be the perfect partner at Julian's side. I was so thrilled, so buzzing with anticipation, that I wanted to share the moment with him. He was getting ready at his own place, and we were meeting at the party. I stood in front of my full-length mirror, found the perfect lighting, struck my best angle, and took a picture. It was the whole production. I looked, for lack of a more humble term, absolutely hot, and I knew it. I sent him the photo with a simple message. "Almost ready? See you there." I waited, my phone in my hand, expecting a flood of fire emojis. I was anticipating a text back telling me how incredible I looked, how he couldn't wait, how lucky he felt. I was picturing his smile when I walked into that party. The little buzz of my phone in my hand felt full of promise. Instead, what I got was a bucket of ice water. The reply came less than a minute later. It was short, cold, and utterly devastating. "That dress is way too revealing for this type of professional event. You're going to need to wear something else." I read it once, then twice. My brain couldn't quite process it. Was he joking? Was this some bizarre, dry humor I hadn't yet discovered? There was no lol or JK, just a flat, clinical command. All the excitement, all the confidence I had felt just moments before, evaporated, replaced by a hot, creeping wave of anger and humiliation. "Are you serious right now?" I typed back, my thumbs trembling slightly. "I just spent my grocery money for the week, on this dress specifically for your party." His response was immediate, as if he'd been waiting for my pushback. And then it started a condescending lecture delivered via text message about professional standards, brand optics, and making the appropriate impression on important clients. He talked about his boss, about the firm's conservative culture, about how everything we did tonight reflected on him. Since when was looking attractive a liability? Since when was a woman feeling confident in her body a negative thing that needed to be managed? Mason kept pushing, suggesting I should wear something more conservative and business appropriate. "Like what, Julian?" I finally called him, my voice tight. "A blazer with dress pants? To a cocktail party at someone's house? That's not business appropriate. That's a costume for a boring corporate drone." "Sloane, you're being dramatic," he said, his voice taking on that infuriatingly calm tone. "I'm just asking you to consider the context." I did consider the context. I shot back, my voice rising. "I bought this specific dress for this specific event. I look amazing in it, and I am planning to wear it." He refused to drop it. He went on and on about how my appearance would be a referendum on his judgment, how his boss and these crucial clients would be judging both of us. The more he complained, the more he criticized, the more my anger solidified into a stubborn, unshakable resolve. This wasn't about a dress anymore. This was about control. Why should I have to dress like a nun just because he was insecure about what his coworkers might think about his girlfriend's body? I am not his employee. I am not his property. I was supposed to be his partner. If he was genuinely embarrassed by me, then we had much bigger problems than a piece of black fabric. "I am not changing," I told him, my voice dangerously low. "If you can't handle having a confident, attractive girlfriend who knows how to dress her body, then that is entirely your problem to work through. Not mine to fix by changing who I am." Looking back, maybe I should have seen where this was going. Maybe a more pragmatic person would have just picked something else to keep the peace. But in that moment, it felt like a fundamental battle for my own identity. He was trying to mold me into a version of myself that made him more comfortable, and I refused to be clay in his hands. And honestly, I still don't think that dress was inappropriate. It was beautiful. The next text I got from him simply said, "I'm going to call you in 5 minutes." That should have been my warning sign. When a man switches from texting to calling in the middle of a fight, It's because he's about to say something he doesn't want a written record of. He called, and his voice had that artificially calm, almost therapeutic tone that guys use when they think they're being perfectly reasonable but are actually being completely manipulative. "Sloane," he began, "I've been doing some thinking about our conversation, and I really need you to understand just how important this particular event is for my career trajectory." He spoke to me like I was a child, an idiot who couldn't comprehend basic professional concepts. But then he dropped the bomb. "If you can't dress appropriately for this occasion," he said slowly, deliberately, "then maybe it would be better if you didn't come with me at all." Just like that. No compromise. No, let's work together to find a solution. Or, what if we went shopping together to find something we both liked? It was a straight-up threat. He was uninviting me from what was supposed to be our first real public outing as a serious couple, all over a damn dress. I genuinely could not believe it. Any normal, healthy boyfriend would be proud to show up with a confident woman on his arm, not ashamed of her. I told him he was being completely ridiculous, that he was acting like I planned to show up in lingerie. But he wouldn't budge. Then came the final, character-revealing blow. The ultimatum. "Either you wear something more conservative and professional," he stated, his voice as cold as steel, "or I'm going to take someone else as my date." Someone else. Like he just had a roster of backup women sitting on a bench, waiting to be called into the game. That's when it all clicked. This was never just about the dress. The dress was the excuse. He was actively looking for a way out, a reason to take someone else to this party. And I had a sinking feeling I knew who. That woman from his office, Paige, the one he was always mentioning in casual conversation. Paige organized the charity drive. Paige has the best ideas in our team meetings. Paige. "You know what? Fine," I said, my voice dripping with a scorn I didn't know I possessed. I decided to call his bluff. "If you are truly that ashamed of me, Julian, then you can absolutely take whoever the hell you want to your precious work party. I'm not going to beg to be someone's date. And I am definitely not going to let you dictate what I wear." A part of me, a small, hopeful, naive part, thought he would back down. That he'd realize how controlling and unreasonable he was being. But he didn't. All he said was, "Okay, fine." And he hung up. Just like that, our 3-month relationship evaporated. I was disposable. Replaceable. And apparently, I was right about who would be replacing me. I didn't go to the party. Of course I didn't. Instead, I sat alone in my apartment, still wearing the beautiful, supposedly inappropriate black dress. I ordered Chinese takeout and ate it straight from the container, the sharp tang of the sweet and sour sauce doing nothing to cut through the bitter taste in my mouth. I felt pathetic, a cliché of the jilted woman. Out of some masochistic impulse I still don't understand, I opened Instagram. I was just mindlessly scrolling, trying to numb my brain with pictures of other people's perfect lives, when I saw it. One of Julian's co-workers, a woman I'd never met, had posted a photo album from the party. The caption was cheerful. "Such a great night celebrating with the team." My thumb froze over the screen, and there he was. Julian, looking polished and impossibly handsome in his expensive navy suit. And clinging to his arm, like she'd been born to occupy that very space, was Paige. She was wearing an incredibly boring matronly navy blue dress. It looked like something a 70-year-old woman would wear to a funeral. It was buttoned all the way up to her chin, with long sleeves and a hemline that fell well below the knee. The whole ultra-modest, conservative package. She was the human equivalent of a beige wall. She was exactly what Julian had desperately wanted me to be. God forbid anyone at his work party catch a glimpse of his girlfriend's collarbone. But here's what really twisted the knife in my chest. They looked happy. Genuinely, disgustingly happy. In every single photograph, they were smiling, laughing. It didn't look forced or awkward, not like a last-minute replacement situation. It looked comfortable, practiced, like they'd been a couple for years. In one photo, Julian had his arm wrapped confidently around her waist, a possessive gesture he had never once made with me in any public setting. He was always so conscious of optics, keeping a polite distance. But with her, he looked proud. They looked like the perfect corporate power couple, ready to be featured in the company newsletter. And me? I was sitting on my couch, a digital stalker obsessively swiping through their happy photos, crumbs of a spring roll on the front of my $200 dress. The dress that had made me feel so powerful just a few hours ago now felt like a costume for a fool. I finally broke down and called my best friend, Harper. I vented the whole sordid story, my voice cracking with a mixture of rage and humiliation. She did her best to make me feel better, launching into a tirade about what a controlling, manipulative asshole Julian was. "You are so lucky, Sloane," she insisted. "Seriously, you discovered his true personality before you wasted any more of your life on him. You dodged a massive bullet." Logically, I knew she was right. But logic does very little to soothe a broken heart. Seeing those photographs of them together, so perfectly matched in their blandness, hurt more than I was willing to admit out loud, even to myself. It felt like Julian had found exactly what he'd been looking for in a partner, and it definitely wasn't me. Paige fit seamlessly into his professional world. She was polished, conservative, safe, predictable. Everything I apparently wasn't, and never could be. The next day, the hurt curdled into pure, unadulterated fury. I wasn't sad anymore. I was pissed off. I called Julian, ready for a fight. When he answered, I let him have it with both barrels. "You are a shallow, controlling piece of trash," I seethed into the phone. "You obviously can't handle being in a relationship with a woman who actually has a personality and knows her own worth." I took a breath. And for the record, Paige looked boring as hell. "If that's what excites you, then good luck building a life with your completely generic, corporate-approved girlfriend." He barely responded to my tirade. He just waited for me to finish, and then, in that same infuriatingly calm voice, he said, "You're proving my point, Sloane. You're being overly dramatic and difficult to deal with." Dramatic? I was being dramatic for being legitimately upset that my boyfriend of 3 months had publicly replaced me? For being hurt that he'd chosen some random coworker over the woman he was supposed to be in a relationship with? The gaslighting was so profound, it almost took my breath away. The absolute worst part was knowing that every single person at that party, his boss, those important clients, all of his colleagues now assumed that Paige was his serious girlfriend. They had all been introduced to her as his date. She got to play the part of the supportive partner in his world, while I was tossed aside like yesterday's garbage. I started obsessing. How long had he been planning this betrayal? Was the dress just the convenient excuse he'd been waiting for? Was I just a temporary placeholder until he worked up the nerve to make a move on his coworker? The more I replayed our 3 months together, the more the little moments of control, the subtle criticisms, started to form a disturbing pattern. I hadn't been a partner, I'd been an audition, and I had failed. Within a single week, it became crystal clear that Julian and Paige were officially, publicly together. This wasn't a one-time thing. They were a real couple. I was having lunch with Harper at a trendy cafe downtown when I saw them walk in. They were holding hands. They sat at a corner table, engaging in all the classic couple behaviors that Julian had barely bothered with when we were together. He fed her a bite of his sandwich. She laughed, touching his arm. They looked disgustingly in love. I couldn't take it. I finally confronted him directly via text, demanding an explanation. How could he just move on without so much as a breakup conversation? His reply was the final nail in the coffin. He claimed that we'd been obviously incompatible from the beginning and that the dress controversy had simply revealed the fundamental misalignment in our core values and my character. My character. As if I was the one with the character flaw. As if I was the one who couldn't communicate or make reasonable compromises. Never mind that he was the one who issued an ultimatum and threatened to replace me the second I didn't immediately fall in line with his controlling demands about my appearance. He had successfully rewritten our history to make me the villain and himself the reasonable man who had no other choice. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. 8 months passed. 8 long, miserable months. I was still completely single, and if I'm being honest, pretty bitter about the whole ordeal. Every guy I attempted to date seemed to find some major issue with me. One thought my clothes were too out there. Another said I was too opinionated. A third ghosted me after I suggested a restaurant he thought was too adventurous. It was like Julian had placed some kind of hex on my dating life, reinforcing his verdict that I was too much. These dark thoughts would creep in late at night, when I was swiping through dating apps, looking at an endless carousel of men who seemed just as unappealing as I apparently was to them. Maybe there really was something fundamentally wrong with me. Maybe I was genuinely too difficult for most men to handle long term. Maybe I expected too much emotional investment or came on too strong. The seeds of doubt Julian had planted were growing into a thick, thorny bush in my mind. Meanwhile, Julian and Paige's picture-perfect relationship unfolded in real time on social media. It was a constant, unavoidable highlight reel of their happiness. Adorable couple photos from a weekend trip to wine country. Check-ins at expensive restaurants he'd never taken me to. A picture of them with his parents, everyone smiling. They were hitting all the traditional relationship milestones he had never even mentioned during our time together. It genuinely looked like he had found his soulmate, while I was just some regrettable mistake he'd made on his journey to true love. I tried to be the bigger person. I tried to tell myself, good for them. If Julian wanted some boring, submissive corporate robot who would never challenge him, then Paige was absolutely perfect for that role. But I couldn't wrap my head around why he'd bothered wasting 3 months of my life if that's what he'd been looking for all along. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I saw the social media announcement that completely shattered what was left of my self-confidence. Julian and Paige were engaged. Fucking engaged. After less than 10 months of being together, the Facebook post was a professional affair. A series of glossy photos of them in a sun-drenched field, her hand held up to the camera to showcase a diamond ring that probably cost more than I made in a year. The caption was a nauseating ode to finding his other half and his partner in everything. The comment section was a flood of congratulations. So perfect for each other, we knew it from the start, clearly soulmates. That's when the devastating truth finally hit me like a freight train. Mason had never, not even for a second, seen me as potential marriage material. I was never a candidate for the main role. Throughout our entire 3 months, the future was a topic he skillfully avoided. I was just the fun, temporary, practice girlfriend while he figured out what he actually wanted in a life partner. Paige was the woman he could confidently bring home to meet his conservative parents. She was the one who would fit seamlessly into every aspect of his life. She would never embarrass him at a work function. She would never challenge his ideas about how a woman should behave. She was wife material, and I was just experience. I tried desperately to convince myself that I was better off. I repeated Harper's words to myself like a mantra. You dodged a bullet. You dodged a bullet. A man who would try to control what I wore wasn't worth my time. A man who would replace me so easily and coldly wasn't worth my tears. And logically, she was absolutely right. But it's incredibly difficult to feel grateful when you're forced to watch your ex-boyfriend build the exact life you thought you were building with him, but with someone else. It's hard not to obsess over what might have happened if I had just compromised that one time. If I'd swallowed my pride and worn a boring conservative dress, would I be the one wearing that engagement ring? Would I be the one planning a wedding, picking out china patterns, and smiling in those sun-drenched photos? Would I be the one who finally got picked, instead of the one who got replaced and forgotten? The brutal truth is, I still don't believe I did anything fundamentally wrong by choosing to wear that dress. It made me feel confident, attractive, and powerful. And if Julian couldn't handle having a girlfriend who was comfortable with her own sexuality and beauty, then that was absolutely his problem to work through, not mine to fix by diminishing myself. To change would have been a lie, and a relationship built on a lie is doomed from the start. But sometimes, in the quiet moments when I'm completely alone with my thoughts and insecurities, I can't help but wonder if being right was worth ending up alone. If standing up for myself was worth watching someone else get everything I thought I wanted? Was my pride worth more than the chance at the kind of lasting love Julian ultimately built with Paige? I suppose I'll never know the answer for certain. Maybe if I had compromised on the dress, the next battle would have been about my friends, my job, or the way I laughed. Maybe the ending was inevitable, and the dress just accelerated it. But one thing I do know, without any doubt, is that I'm not changing who I fundamentally am for anyone, ever again. If that means staying single for a while longer, or even for the rest of my life, then that's just how it's going to be. At least I'll be true to myself. At least the person I see in the mirror will be my own. Even if that authenticity means ending up completely alone while everyone else around me seems to be moving on to bigger, better, and shared things.